today we have a number of work sessions. First matter is LD3. Do you want to start us off?
I'd be pleased to do so. Thank you. At this time, I believe Molly will actually pass out a bill analysis that I've prepared for. I did a joint bill analysis for LD3 and LD4, if that helps, given the nature of the content here today. I'll wait just a moment till that comes around.
Okay, great. Thank you. Give us the highlights of it. Okay.
Sure.
I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely, be pleased to do so. So to begin, just for the highlights on the first page, you can see the summaries included at the top, and I also included the public hearing information. Some of the key points that I will raise as highlights for these two bills is that there's some relevant federal and state laws to think about as we consider both LD3 and LD4. I will read just a bit on page 2 under federal law that pursuant to Title 15 of the U.S. Code, sections 260 through 267, there is an established federal policy to promote the adoption of an observance of uniform standard time within the time zones prescribed by law. And the United States observes a national policy, a daylight savings time, which requires the advancement of the nation's clocks ahead 1 hour from the second Sunday of March to the first Sunday in November annually. And any state laws pertaining to the observance of daylight savings time must comport with federal law, specifically as cited the portions of the U.S. Code. And I've also appended those sections for your review. I will highlight under the Maine Revised Statutes, Title I, Section 151 for state law, as it is currently written. The standard time for the state is the time as determined by Title 15 of the U.S. Code, Sections 260 through 67, which involves the observance of daylight savings time from March to November, except that if federal law changes to permit the year-round observance of daylight saving time, and all the states in the Eastern Time Zone and the District of Columbia elect to observe Eastern Daylight Saving Time year-round, the year-round daylight saving time will take effect on the next start date of Eastern Daylight Time after both conditions are met, if the state is not already observing daylight savings time. And I've appended that section of law for your review as well. So knowing those two pieces, to keep that in mind, some background information that I did highlight is, as noted by the sponsor in Title 15 of the U.S. Code, Section 260A, a state can exempt itself by law from participating in daylight savings time without federal approval. And I included a direct citation there for review. I will note that a request to change a time zone boundary through federal law is a separate piece that might have been previously mentioned, but I wanted to highlight for information for the committee to have, is that under federal law, there's presently no mechanism for any state or political subdivision to request the permanent adoption of daylight savings time. And I'll read this to highlight what that really means here. So as outlined on the Department of Transportation's website, the Department of Transportation does not have the power to repeal or change daylight savings time, and states do not have the authority to choose to be on permanent daylight savings time. Instead, the Uniform Time Act of 1966, with this citation there, establishes a system of uniform daylight saving time throughout the nation and its possessions, and provides that either Congress or the Secretary of Transportation can change a time zone boundary. So states and political subdivisions can request federal approval for a change to a time zone boundary, but not for permanent requests of adoption of daylight savings time. And additional information about the Secretary and Department's authority to change a time zone boundary has also been appended for your review. I also briefly included a brief snapshot of Maine legislative history regarding previous legislation on this topic. Similar proposals on this topic have been introduced each session since 2017, including proposals to request the Secretary of Transportation move the state to Atlantic Standard Time. And a report published from the Congressional Research Service highlights a little bit of that and kind of highlights that that difference that I previously discussed, that the proposals would in effect change the standard time zone from Eastern Standard Time to Atlantic Standard Time if a request or desire was being made to move to permanent daylight savings year round. And I will note, as noted by the sponsor and included in the testimony submitted by the University of Maine system, the 131st Maine legislature directed the UMaine system to study the potential effects of Maine adopting permanent Eastern Standard Time or permanent Eastern Daylight Time. And the report was included in the testimony provided for the committee. I highlighted two brief drafting considerations as potential for review for the committee. One for LD3, the inclusion of one word, potentially thinking about the way that word could possibly narrow the applicability of congressional action. And in LD4, similarly, just thinking about an effective date, since Maine presently observes daylight savings time from March to November. The committee may want to consider whether an effective date is needed in the bill in case the state is observing daylight savings time at the time such a law could possibly take effect. And I will also note there were two requests for information, the history of daylight savings time, as well as a sunrise and sunset comparison chart. Both were completed by our legislative research team and have been appended for your review. And lastly, for fiscal information to highlight for LD3, I have no information yet to share from OFPR, but for LD4, the preliminary fiscal impact statement shows no fiscal impact.
Okay, questions? Comments by members of the committee? Representative Rollins?
So, thank you, Kristen. And that was a good summary. As I read back after what you had stated, and we start talking about Eastern Standard and daylight saving and back and forth, I think I've caught that actually what we're doing, if we adopt 3, is moving to Atlantic Standard Time. Is the same as going permanently daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so two parts. Yes, I think I understand what you're saying. Just to clarify, so as presently written, LD3 doesn't propose to move to Atlantic Standard daylight time. The way LD3 is presently written would allow for the state to move to permanent daylight savings time if congressional action or federal law changed to permit that. But what I think maybe your question was in effect, if permanent daylight savings time is the same thing as a move to Atlantic Standard Time, requesting a time zone boundary change, that is correct.
Yep. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Representative Greenwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the analysis. It's detailed. Our side doesn't have a preference on LD3 or LD4. We just want to stop flipping the clocks back and forth. So whichever zone we land in, because I see that as, one does this, one does that, and the other option is to continue as we do now and spring ahead and fall back. But I think we were pretty consistent on our side that nobody wants to keep springing ahead and falling back. So,
Okay, well said. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Tuell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would echo what Representative Greenwood had said. I think a lot of the debate falls on geographic lines. And when I say debate, I mean, I say as a matter of preference. Folks that would prefer to permanently fall back tend to be more to the western and southern areas, whereas in my area down east, people say that if it is going to change, they would prefer it to be moved to a permanent move forward. And the reason, and I would agree with that as well, as we're already on it 9 months of the year, and I believe it'd be the least disruptive. My preference is LD3. I would support LD4 for the reasons Representative Greenwood had mentioned. So I'd like to see, hopefully one or the other of these bills will advance out of both bodies.
Representative Matlack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with both these gentlemen. I think that was the consensus in our caucus also, that whichever one we choose, we just want to stop changing the clocks.
Mhm.
I personally see a little bit of issue with LD4, although I don't think it's a deal breaker, as opposed to LD3, where we'll just coast along until we get enough other states so that we can make the change from one side to the other, from one time zone to the other. So I'm not sure how difficult it is to adopt a singular Eastern Standard Time and what the real impacts might be. But I would be open to either one, just so we stop making the changes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Representative Farrin and then Representative Rollins. Representative Rollins, if you could just,
I'm sorry.
that's all right.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually, I'd like to support the LD4 with the testimony from a week or so ago. I like the what they call the healthy body clock being at noon time. It was the same hours on each side. I like hearing the testimony there. And I also like the idea of kids being safer in the morning, not going to school in the dark. I think if you kept Eastern Standard Time year round, you'd eliminate a lot of safety problems in the morning for all our kids getting on and going to school, on bus routes and all that. So that's just something that would be very important to me. Thank you.
Representative Rollins?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, for clarity, to point out that if we choose Bill 3, LD 3, we'll maintain what we're doing now. We can't just switch to permanent daylight savings time. We'll continue flipping the clocks back and forth until the federal government decides, which probably is going to mean a lot of people in the region have to join the same mindset, I would think. So just point that out for clarity, that a vote for 3 would keep us flipping until the federal government decides, because they're not approving LD 3.
Okay. Representative Adams, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Representative Adams. I represent District 144, beautiful towns of Acton and Lebanon. Sorry I wasn't here earlier, but I was in another committee meeting, but happy to be back.
Representative Salisbury?
I'd like to make a motion, ought to pass on LD3.
Should we make it ought to pass as amended? Because we're still going to wait for the fiscal impact statement.
I think up to you. I think sometimes for practice reasons, you can do ought to pass, and I'll bring it back before the committee, and then you can determine whether or not that includes the fiscal note at the time, whether you
Okay.
believe that changes the nature of it, but up to you.
Okay, so we have a motion to ought to pass. Is there a second? There's a second. Any further discussions? Oh, Representative Tuell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe, just as a matter of housekeeping, our analyst had a word that she had suggested be added to LD3, and I would think we should probably do that as well, just as a matter of course.
Representative Salisbury?
Thank you for that, Representative Tuell. I do see that. I'm sorry I missed that. So it would be ought to pass as amended, changing in line 9, the word Eastern. So it would be ought to pass as amended.
Okay, and there's a second.
As the second, I
Yep.
would agree to that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. So, Representative Rollins.
Clarity on what exactly we're voting.
We're voting on ought to pass as amended on LD3. The only change has been including the word Eastern in line 9 per the memo we received. This blue memo that we received on page 3.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Point of clarification,
Yeah.
if possible, Mr. Chair. So the inclusion of the word Eastern is what exists presently, so it would be potentially the removal of the word Eastern.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Representative Matlack.
Thank you. I sort of look upon 3 and 4 as belt and suspenders, in that I probably will be voting for both of these. But I want to move ahead. So irrespective of whether 4 can stand on its own, I want to make sure that we take away some of the impediments to taking away the flip-flopping from Eastern Daylight Savings Time to the other time zone.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Senator Martin.
I'm in favor of 3 for the fact that it waits until the rest of the East Coast of the United States jumps aboard. I don't want to see it change and then be 30 miles from New Hampshire and have a different time in New Hampshire than we do in Maine. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I have asked Molly. You can come forward and take the roll.
All right, so the motion was ought to pass as amended on LD 3. And we will start with Representative Tuell.
Thank you. I am a yes.
Representative Tuell, yes. Representative Underwood.
Yes.
Representative Underwood, yes. Representative Adams.
Yes.
Representative Adams, yes. Representative Pomerleau.
No.
Representative Pomerleau, no. Representative Greenwood.
As much as I support it because I want to do it, I'm going to vote no because I want a divided report because I want more to come forward. So I'm voting no.
Okay. Representative Greenwood, no. Representative Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yes. Representative Salisbury.
Yes.
Representative Salisbury, yes. Senator Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Baldacci, yes. Senator Martin.
Yes.
Senator Martin, yes. Representative Copeland.
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. Representative Rollins.
Yay.
Representative Rollins, yes. Representative Farrin.
No.
Representative Farrin, no. We have 9 yeses and 3 nos
Okay.
and 1 absent.
Okay. Thank you. Now on to LD4.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion on LD4 of ought to pass as amended, and we should set an effective date as our analyst had suggested.
Well, let's set the effective date first, and then you can do ought to pass as amended or something. Yeah. So do you have a proposed effective date or?
I would ask our analyst, was the need of an effective date so that if the federal time changes in the future, we needed a date to kind of stay there? Or was it just, could you clarify?
Yes, most certainly. So the effective date was since Maine presently observes daylight savings time from March to November, the committee may wanted to consider whether an effective date was needed in case the state is presently observing daylight savings time at the time the law would take effect. So for LD4, that would be, my understanding is the permanent adoption of standard time. So if the state was already observing daylight savings time, federal law, for example, sometimes will put the effective date that I've seen in my research as the next time that the clocks would have originally changed rather than the middle of when the effective date of the law happens.
Can you provide me that next date?
Yes, I certainly.
That should be the second.
Yeah, I believe that would be in the US code, that part of the section 260A, which would be in either the March or February date established in statute.
I would make that as an amendment, ask her to
The
clarify that
effective
date
next year,
for the effective next date.
next year.
Next year, and make that as a motion ought to pass as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'd ask, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Rollins.
I didn't realize everybody else was done. I don't understand. We just voted ought to pass on 3. Theoretically, now vote ought to pass on 4.
So people can vote any way they want to on the separate bills. And I think that some people may be sending different messages with their votes. So nothing has changed in terms of the substance of the bill, but people, can vote the way they want to and send the message from that vote. So all I can say is the bill is still the same. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Representative Matlack.
Thank you. Sometimes we have bills that are fairly similar or almost identical, in which case the committee may decide that they would vote ought not to pass on one and concentrate on the other one. But these two bills do two different things. So we need to vote on the bills separately because they're not the same.
And I don't know if the sponsor who is present wishes to comment on that or not, or you don't have to if you don't want to.
I appreciate the committee and thank you for the invitation. Put forward, and then you will see that both bills are sponsored and co-sponsored by the same people, because I think I agree with the committee here that I'm not particularly fussed about which one happens. I think sending them through the legislative process, and everybody has an opinion on this, and I think having the debate is very healthy. So I don't have any trouble with passing both of them upstairs into the chambers for debate, and I think that conversation will be useful, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'd ask Molly to come forward and to take the roll.
Okay, just clarifying, this is ought to pass as amended.
Correct.
Okay. Representative Tuell,
Yes.
Representative Tuell, yes. Representative Underwood,
Yes.
Representative Underwood, yes. Representative Adams,
Yes.
Representative Adams, yes. Representative Pomerleau,
Yes.
Representative Pomerleau, yes. Representative Greenwood,
Yes.
Representative Greenwood, yes. Representative Matlack,
Yes.
Representative Matlack, yes. Representative Salisbury,
No.
Representative Salisbury, no. Senator Baldacci,
Just to emphasize that these votes are being, these votes by me are being taken to send a message that we want to stop the changing of the clocks. I'm voting yes.
Senator Baldacci, yes. Senator Martin,
No.
Senator Martin, no. Representative Copeland,
Yes.
Representative Copeland, yes. Representative Rollins,
Yes.
Representative Rollins, yes. Representative Farrin,
Yes.
Representative Farrin, yes. We have 10 yeses and 2 nos and 1 absent.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, yes, Representative Salisbury?
Before we move on to the next bill, can I just clarify something on the first bill?
We also need because you're a no vote, we need you, have you.
Your
Explain.
minority
Oh, my-
report.
Minority.
Yeah, you and,
My minority report is ought not to pass.
is that agreeable to the other minority
Yes.
members?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll set with that. Can we go back to LD3? Against my better judgment, going back to
You want
LD3.
to make a motion to go back? to-
No,
oh,
I want to ask a question first
Oh,
and then
okay.
perhaps. So just clarifying information that you provided for us in your bill analysis. Thank you for that. So my vote, which we just took, was ought to pass as amended, but indeed there is no amendment. Is that correct? Currently, because
So could you restate
yeah,
that question?
so
Or just make
in
sure I follow.
my vote was ought to pass as amended because it was inclusion of the word Eastern, but the word Eastern is already in there.
Removal,
Remove Eastern.
removal
So
of the word
remove of
Eastern.
Eastern. Okay, I just want to clarify that we had that clear. Okay.
That is
Yeah.
what my records indicate.
That's all.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
I just
because it
want to
was
make
a little
sure.
bit unclear.
Okay, good. Thank you
Okay.
for that.
Okay, we're going on to Representative Tool. Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We also, in the discussion about the minority reports here, we didn't get a minority report on LD3 since for the folks that voted contrary.
Okay, so that would be Representative Pomerleau, Representative Farrin, or who else?
And Representative.
Greenwood, okay, and, you know, so I'm assuming it's ought not to pass?
Ought not to pass.
Okay. Yep, thank you, Representative Tool.